Hi, fourth graders, it's Mrs. Adams. Welcome to our classroom online. Today, what we're going to be working on is the beginning of narrative writing. Now, remember that narrative writing is telling a story. And I know that all of you are really good at telling stories. I've heard many of your stories. And the other day, you got some pictures and you were able to tell some stories, and I appreciated you sending those to me via Class Dojo or Mr. Dixon or Mrs. Gish. When you're writing a story, sometimes a story can get really big and really overwhelming. So I want you to think of a watermelon, okay? So watermelons are really big and full and juicy, okay? That's a really big story, and that's a story that's going to be hard to tell all at once. So what we're going to do is take that watermelon, okay? And we're going to look at just the seeds inside, okay? And these seeds, we call them seed ideas. Those are going to be your small moments, okay? So for example, my big watermelon idea would be a time I went to the amusement park. Now there's a lot of things I did at that amusement park, and I could write for pages and pages and pages on it, but we're just going to focus on the seed moments, okay? So I could write about getting soaked on a ride there and how uncomfortable I was and how I had to put a quarter in a little slot machine that had this warm air blowing on you to dry you off. It was at in Disneyland, I believe. I could talk about eating cotton candy and how that made me feel, what it smelled like, what it tastes like. I could also talk about riding on roller coasters. And for those of you who know me, I'm not really a fan of heights. So that would be a really good one for me to write about. Another idea would be fourth grade. Now, again, that would be a really big idea. That would be the whole watermelon, but we're going to take we're going to take that idea and we're going to shrink it down into a seed idea. So I might talk about, and I know that this is not true for all fourth graders, you could write about being in Mrs. Adams' class. You could talk about the friends that you had. You could talk about awards that you got and what how that made you feel, what the award was for. You could talk about this yucky virus that's going around, which is why we're doing online learning. And so we are breaking a big idea into seed ideas, okay? So today, all I want you to do is be thinking about seed ideas that you can write about. And I'm going to come up with some of my own seed ideas on what I'm going to call kind of a life map. Excuse me. Okay. So I'm going to start here on my life map. All right. I was born in a really big family. Okay. There were 6 siblings, and we got into a lot of trouble together. We love each other very much, but we also like to fight, and we like to play jokes on each other and stuff like that. So I could talk about my huge family, right? That would be the big watermelon. But when I get down to the seed, I might talking about the time that my sister Lisa, Amy, and I decided that when we were supposed to be taking a nap, we played choo-choo train, where of course we went chugga choo-choo down the hall, thinking our mom couldn't hear us. Now, me being the youngest one, I had to be in the back, right? Those of you that are the youngest, you always have to be in the back. That didn't work out so well for me, because as soon as mom came down the hall and saw us, we had to flip around, and guess who was in the back that time? Me again. So I was the first one that mom got to. It didn't work out so well for me. Another seed idea I could talk about is we lived on a really busy intersection called the Guide and Badger. And it had so many cars going by each day. And the cars that were going north would be the ones that were going to Canada. So we were about 3 minutes from the Canadian border. And so my brother, Nathan, was being kind of a pest to my older siblings, Denise and Mark. And so they had warned him and said, if you do it again, I'm going to pull you out into the snow. So before I give it too much away, we would talk about the time that Nathan, in front of all of the cars on the Guide and Badger, were pulled out into the snow. Now I'm going to give you a hint. He wasn't dressed completely. So that might be a seed story that I will talk about. Another event I might talk about, a seed event, is the time that my siblings and I all just slept under the stars when we were camping. That was just such a cool moment. And I remember how I felt and what it smelled like and what I saw and how we laughed and told funny stories. So I'm thinking of specific incidences. Okay. Another big watermelon idea might be when I was, when I had my children. So I might have a funny story about Dawson, and I might have a funny story about Spencer. In fact, I do, but again, I don't want to give those away. So my big seed idea, my big watermelon idea would be about Dawson and Spencer and having my kids. And then my seed idea would be a specific story about each one of the children. Okay. One other example that I might do, and I'm going to make my little story map here, is any kind of pets that I had. If you have pets, you probably can relate to some of these, maybe not the first one. So when I talk about pets, again, think to yourself, is that a watermelon idea or is that a seed idea? Think about that. Okay, those of you who said that that is a watermelon idea, you're correct. So when I want to write about one seed idea, I might talk about the time that we had a pet chicken named Edward that came to our house one day, and he was black, and he followed us to the bus, and he actually waited for us. We don't even know where he came from. Living on the Guide and Badger, we got a lot of pets that showed up at our houses. So this one we named Edward, and there's a funny story about Edward. Again, I don't want to give it away. But Edward got in really big trouble with my dad one day, and so the chicken that followed us to the bus and picked us up from the bus each day had some unexpected things happen to him as well. So you have to stay tuned for that. Another one I might talk about, and again, please excuse my drawing. Those of you in my class, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so we had a horse named Patches, and Patches was a crazy horse. We used to ride him, but he was really old, so he didn't go very fast. That's why we got to ride him. One day, my dad was going to give Patches his medicine, and so he saw my dad coming up to get the medicine or give him the medicine, and all of a sudden, the horse just went down and fainted. And my dad's like, oh my goodness, what's going on? What's wrong with my horse? And you won't believe this. Patches kind of opened one eye like this, saw my dad there, and then closed his eyes. Again, he was faking it. He knew that the medicine was coming. And so once my dad said, oh, come on, Patches, and got the horse up, he was totally fine. So the horse was faking it because they didn't want to get the medicine. Animals are really, really smart. And those of you in my class, you know that I always love to talk about my Dee Dee girl, which is our first family pet, and Defense has been a source of many, many stories here in Mrs. Adams' classroom. But what I would do is focus on a specific, a small seed idea of Defense. One time when we went to the animal park, and she would not leave my side because she didn't want to play. And we thought to ourselves, well, what dog doesn't want to play with other animals? And so I tried to get her out there and throw balls and stuff like that, and she would not go. She stood right by my side. And to be really honest, she still does that. She doesn't really love the dog park anymore. But again, I could talk about how funny that was, or how what that looked like, what kind of day it was. We are not going to be focusing on the who, what, when, where, how did it smell, what did it look like. Today, fourth graders, your only job is to come up with a story map. And notice the pictures do not count. That's not a big deal. Come up with a story map, writing down all of the big ideas that you can think of, things that have happened in your life, okay? And once you get those ideas down, I want you to write down a few seed ideas that go along with each one, okay? So for example, if you're going to be talking about your family, that's a really big story. We need to take that down to a seed idea. So you're going to talk about one specific incident with your family. Maybe, like I said, a vacation that you went on one vacation. Where did you go? What did you do? So we're not doing any writing today. The only thing you need to do is come up with your story map, okay? And then next time we meet, I'm going to look for you posting a picture as to what small event you are going to be writing about. Okay? Thanks for listening.